There we go. Okay, we'll go through the pre-flight if you guys are ready. Okay, here we go.
Put it away accidentally.
So you look at the motor, make sure everything's tight. Okay, let's go flying.
It's supposed to be that.
Stop that. You like to be safe.
Flight inspection of flight.
I'm just kidding. I mean, I've been doing it just instinctively to the ones that I've been touching, but so one of the first things I do is I wiggle the prop. Wiggling the prop gives you like 10 different things. It's all sorts of things. For one, you check to see the prop's tight. 2, you're checking the bearings on the reduction to make sure those are tight. You're checking to make sure everything's bolted in and secure. You're checking your motor mounts and making sure your motor mounts aren't broken. If you had a broken motor mount, wiggling the prop would fix that.
4 of them?
If your prop was cracked, you could also probably feel an issue in the prop. Like when he turtled the motor over backwards, I really wanted to look over that prop and check and make sure it wasn't cracked. So I'm wiggling that. I'm checking to make sure the bolts aren't loose. Everything's tight, looking good. There we go. Then I check the spark plug. Then you check the head. Look for any oil coming out of that head. If your head is loose, that's really bad too, because it'll start rattling and you'll lose compression. That's pretty easy though, because you're gonna see oil coming out of your head. Now, you gotta make sure you don't confuse it with the blow off of the exhaust, because you're always gonna have oil coming off the exhaust. That's normal, but if it's coming out of the head, you're looking for stains on that head to make sure that's tight. So you want to keep those the head bolts tight if they're not, and snug them down. Same with the cylinder. Check that this connection is tight and you're not getting any blow off out of there. So everything's got to be tight. I mean, this could be rattling around and it would still fly. So sometimes it's pretty blatantly obvious. Check your belt. You squeeze it in, make sure that's good and tight so your belt's not loose. That's one you'll also do when you rev your motor up. You're listening to make sure the belt's not slipping. It'll be, you know, really squealy at the high RPMs if it is.
Check the belt itself.
Yep, and then check the belt itself, of course. And you need to look. So while I'm doing this, I'm looking at the ribs, and I roll the prop around to check to make sure there's not like a flat spot or something in the belt where it slipped and burned the belt. So the belt looks good. Look at the edges, make sure it's not fraying, make sure it's not cracked, make sure it's
safe to just spin that prop like that.
Yeah, no problem. It's really hard to prop start them. I mean, you have to take it and flip it 3/4 of a turn really hard. So there is no way it's gonna start with a little tiny pop. And especially with my hand on it, it's not gonna go anywhere.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Do they have a belt adjustment screw or something?
Yes, there's a special tool. You're gonna loosen this bolt here, you loosen this bolt here.
Yeah.
So this bolt here,
Yeah.
at the end, and then you loosen that, which this is a C-clamp, this crack here.
Yeah.
And then you put there's a wrench that goes right here onto this eccentric. So the wrench goes down here and you turn it, and then it turns up and down on a lobe to adjust the tightness of your belt. Make sure that's good. Then the other thing you can do is sometimes you'll put a wrench in the middle and turn it that way. So you can either use a wrench there or a wrench there. And then once you get it tight, you just tighten those back down. And that's pretty easy. The belt, you really only adjust it basically once around 15 hours when it's new. And then they really, I mean, it's like those belts last a long dang time. Okay.
Once you get crap in the cock, if you like,
yeah, if you get sand in there,
junk in there, and you don't clean it out, it'll take the belts out.
or a line. If you wrap a line in there, a line could cut your belt too.
Oh, yeah.
Then you wiggle your air box. Look for the dry rot. This is kind of a wear item on this particular unit. This air box will dry rot right here, and so over time it'll start cracking, and so you just buy another one of these. Lasts about 50 to 80 hours approximately.
That's it.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird, that's the one thing that kind of wears on these things. And so you want to both turn it and make sure that this is glue. This is shoe goo, kind of special type of glue that is both elastic, but it's also impervious to fuels and oil and stuff. So we shoe goo those suckers on there, make sure it doesn't twist, make sure it's not cracked. You can already see this one's got a little bit of a crack in it, But again, it happens really slow over time. So, you know, even if there's a bit of a crack, you're good to go until it starts to get notable, if you see what I'm saying. Okay.
In order, and then when you're decide it's no good on a pre-flight,
I have a spare. Then
pull it out of your car and throw it out.
Oh, listen to that. There we go. We just found an issue. So you bang your muffler. There should not be a banging, clanging sound. So that's bad.
So let's go bang on the right.
So let's see what's going on here. And it's right here. So these bolts are loose. And that's probably okay, but that should be torqued down. Where's Mo? Mo!
I can get you some tools.
Help! So, banging the muffler, smack it. You kind of just whack it, and you'll hear for rattles. Right here, Mo, if you would, pretty please, could you grab, it takes 2 wrenches, and you got to wrench these 2 bolts together. See how this is loose? Could you just tighten that up pretty please?
Where are the tools?
There's a toolbox like right in between, like where the helmets are and the harnesses go on the floor. Like back towards the fuel, there you go. Yep. So you smack on that. You want to make sure these bolts are tight. Then you look at your motor mount. See these rubber mounts? Make sure those are not breaking. Those can crack. And so you keep an eye on those and make sure those are all tight. Luckily there's 2 of them, so it's pretty rare that they both break at the same time. But, you know, this right here is really kind of not that big of a deal. Something over here would be a much bigger issue. So that's not a big issue. Then you look at your carburetor. When you move your air box, make sure your carburetor is tight. There's bolts in there. These bolts could be loose, in which case your manifold is loose. That's horribly bad because you could seize your motor. If you allow air in on this side of the carburetor, you could seize your motor. If it's loose here, it's not gonna matter because you're just letting air into the engine or into the carb. And so, you know, when you wiggle it, make sure that's good and secure and your carburetor doesn't have any play whatsoever. So that looks all good to go. Make sure this little wire isn't like resting on something that's gonna destroy it. That's your kill switch wire. So I like to just...
what's the default if it gets destroyed?
Wind it up. Well, if your kill switch doesn't work, you'd basically land your motor and then just pop the spark plug cap is pretty easy.
But
the other way you could do it is you could squeeze, you could press the prime button, hold that would kill the motor because it would flood the motor immediately. You could rip your fuel hose off, pop the fuel hose off, but then the motor could still run for a couple of minutes. And so you got plan A, B, C.
So the primer, you would pump it or just hit it once, or hold it in?
The primer bulb?
Yeah.
The
primer bulb.
You could rip it off of the gas tank. That one's actually not going to do anything.
This guy.
I was thinking about something different. So squeezing the primer bulb while it's running is not going to kill your motor. Yeah, it's not going to hurt it at all. Yep. Okay, so then you want to check your fuel. Crap, that's illegal. That's below 500 feet. So another thing, when you squeeze your primer bulb, you know, you're going to squeeze it pretty hard because you're trying to fill this fuel filter. And so make sure you're not squirting fuel anywhere so your fuel system is not loose. And you're looking at everything. This gotta, you know, can't have any leaks here. You can't be blowing fuel here, blowing fuel there, blowing fuel there. So you just kind of keep an eye on that one. Bam, check all your Velcros, make sure you didn't mess any. So you got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. So you got 16 Velcros. And so go through all your Velcros. Every now and then people miss a Velcro, like here. If it's flopping out, it could go in your prop. That would be kind of ugly. So you check your Velcros. Make sure all of your Velcros are as tight as you can get them without breaking them. They should be really, really secure. Like, see how this one's kind of just sloppy? You want these suckers tight because it strings your cage like a bow and it makes your cage stronger. So keep those a lot tighter.
It's holding it together, it's Velcro.
Yep.
I undo
In your oldest
this one,
family
this
video,
one, this one, and that one
you said those two
every day.
don't tighten, or
Correct, except for those two. No, that's the same. So all of the Velcros except for these two, because there's nothing in between these. And so if you crank them in, it'll literally bend your cage.
How long do the Velcros last?
You don't want to do it pretty much forever. Yeah, I mean,
I
Velcro.
mine every time I fly because I have to get it in my car, and they're still doing great.
Now,
Yeah.
the only thing so far you've said concerns me is the 15-hour adjustment.
Yeah.
It's not hard to adjust it.
Total non-issue. It starts at like full throttle, which you guys are almost never going to use, like wide open throttle. But if you went to buried full wide open throttle, at the very high end, you'll start to hear the belt start to squeal. And it'll go like, and then it'll catch. And it'll squeal just a little tiny bit, and then it'll catch. And then it'll do it a little bit more. And so it'll start getting worse and worse over time. It'll give you all kinds of time. It won't just all of a sudden go from perfect to slipping like all in 1 second. So it's really, you know, I mean, you could keep flying it for a long time, and then you get to like, okay, I gotta tighten my belt. So it's not like something that's gonna just sneak up on you and bam.
So in winter time, it's probably more squeal. Like you hear more the squeal.
Yeah, when it's cold, once it warms up,
Yeah, it's fine.
again, if it's squealing at all, it's loose. It should never squeal whatsoever.
Right.
Cold, even when you start it, you know, but like when you first start it when it's cold, that's where it'll start squealing, is on your motor run up. So that'll be basically the first place you'll notice it. Once it warms up, it won't squeal if it's just barely loose. So again, it gives you lots of warning. Check another thing you check when you wiggle your prop is you're checking to make sure your frame's not cracked, because you want to make sure everything's secure. Like if this frame was broken in two and you wiggle your prop back and forth, you're going to feel the slop in your frame. So you're looking for any frame cracks. Make sure your comfort bar Velcros are good and tight and secure. Everything's good. Check your reserve. Onto your reserve. I said check your reserve, you idiot, not chuck your reserve. Okay, there you go. You got your pins, rubber bands. Make sure the rubber bands aren't dry rotted. Those will crack and fall off.
So what am I looking for in the pins? Yeah, they're there.
You're looking for the rubber bands. Make sure the pins are down in through that little connection.
Okay.
If it comes out, then it allows this to be unvelcroed and come off.
Okay.
I mean, we got 2 pins. It's pretty darn secure, but the worst is if the bottom one were to come out and the Velcro were to somehow come loose, the reserve could fall out the bottom. And I mean, accidental deployments are very, very rare. We designed this system.
Where's
so
the hook knife?
It's darn good. Your hook knife is up here, boom, and it should be facing this way so that your fingers catch it on the way out. It's opposing razor blades that will cut right through your dang riser, harness, anything. Yeah, that works really well. And you don't really use that. It's not your utility knife.
So talk to me about
for safety.
chucking the reserve. So
you would rip it off.
And then you have to grab it?
You're gonna rip off the Velcro. The reserve is gonna fall onto that handle. So the handle is gonna have about a 6-8 inch string. And so the reserve is gonna be hanging from a 6-inch strap. So you're gonna have a brick on your rope, and it's gonna hang from your handle. So you're gonna take your handle and you're gonna swing and throw it down to the left to the side.
So you never let go of the red handle?
Yes, you do, because you throw the handle. Because the reserve is attached to the handle.
So you first tear it open, then you grab the handle and throw?
No, you grab the handle and you rip the handle off. And the reserve is gonna be hanging from your handle.
Okay.
Because as soon as you break the rubber bands and pop the pins out, which is really simple, it's not gonna, you know.
Easy, right.
The key is to not do it so violently. Because when you're in a pressure situation, people wanna go, wah! It's like, we don't have to teach you how to throw it, we gotta teach you how not to throw it. Do not rip it out as hard as you physically can, because you can pull it right out of the bag, so you don't wanna do that. So rip it free and chuck it, you know, reasonably without being psycho. I mean, it's total.
Down to the left.
Yeah, just chuck it down to the left. You don't chuck it up because there's rubber bands, and so it has to hit the end of the bridle. So it's got to go about 6-8 feet, hit the end of the bridle, and it'll pop the rubber bands off. So if you chuck it up, it'll just go clunk and fall back down until it hits the bottom. Then it'll pop the rubber bands. Then it has to go up again. So it's faster if you throw it down so that it hits the end of the rubber bands, immediately opens, and then flies above you.
Is it weighted?
It is not just the weight of the reserve, but the reserve weighs about 3 pounds for the really light one. That's a lot of weight chucking around. So then You got your harness. So check your harness, make sure your harness isn't, you know, cut. Like if you were to land on pavement or something and do a big old butt slider on pavement, you could cut this harness right here and cut that strap in two. So make sure your straps are all good, but even if you cut this, it's quadruply redundant. I mean, it's like nothing you could cut is gonna make you fall out of the harness. So it's pretty ridiculously safe setup. This, make sure that it's not cutting into your leg straps, because that's going through a piece of carbon fiber, and the little strapping that's covering it, if it were to come out, it can, you know, cut into your leg straps. Again, you know, you're not really gonna have both of them fail at the same time. So even if one failed, you're still hooking in, so you're totally good. So you got redundant systems. Check your comfort bars, make sure there's no cracks, especially if you crash and smack in, make sure you didn't bend or crack your comfort bar. Look in there and make sure your dang comfort bar isn't broken. You just got to make sure you're not damaging things. These things are crazy strong. You would have to really, I mean, you could total the unit and your comfort bars would still probably be fine. They're specifically made stronger than the frame so that the frame crushes before the comfort bars do. So we heat treat these suckers back to T6, and the frame and sub-assembly only goes to T5, so the frame is softer than the comfort bars, specifically so the frame crushes before your comfort bars, so it holds your position, forcing your comfort bars to work. This little tab, you can kind of keep an eye on this one, and just make sure that little tab is there. It's not that big of a deal, but basically, if your spring were to break, another thing is, you'll see the units, they got a big honking rubber handle. Those handles are heavy, so if your spring were to break, that heavy handle would pull the rope out, the rope would go into your prop, and it would destroy the whole unit. So that's really bad. So we make the handle out of a little piece of fuel hose. Cheap, light, easy to get at, and you can hook a thumb on it as opposed to having to grab it. So it makes it really easy, but it weighs nothing. This little tab doesn't take much resistance to pull it through the little pulley, but it's enough to keep your rope from pulling out. So if your spring ever did break, at least the rope should not come out and go into the prop. That's the plan, to keep that. So that's what that little tab is for. Throttle assembly. People will put the throttle in their hand and then stand up and pull hard against the throttle cable. That's bad, don't do that. If you pull really hard against your throttle cable, you can pop it out of the barrel adjuster. So the throttle cable housing can come out of the barrel adjuster, which is right here. We heat shrink this with a glue heat shrink to try and make it as strong as possible. But if you're ridiculous and pull super, super hard, it could lock full throttle. I mean, you can seat it by holding the rocker arm and pulling the trigger and just making sure the whole system is seated so all of your throttle cable housings are seated properly. Bingo, bango, boing. Make sure. Now, you check your throttle, make sure that's all good. You don't want to, you know, be starting it when it's locked full throttle. That would be horribly bad. Bad plan. Did you get this, Mo? Where'd Bo go?
Hey,
let's go, man.
Good morning.
Good to see you.
See you too.
Did it.
We've been flying.
Did you do the muffler?
No, I was waiting for the.
Oh, got it. No worries.
No, I didn't fly yesterday.
Okay, so now I'm going to pull the pull start handle really hard.
Here's your own paper. Okay, this one.
Never mind. I was kidding.
That's what you need. So I've seen that.
Yeah, he didn't move. He's like, whoa. Unit fully assembled.
Talk to you.
Comfort bars installed. We went over that. Frame, cage, Velcros, comfort bars, look for crotch tightness. Netting secure. We didn't really talk about that one. Make sure your netting's tight. If you like fall down and crush and bend a cage piece in or whatever, the netting could go slack. If the netting goes slack, you could technically have a piece of Kevlar come off of a rivet, and if that Kevlar came off the rivet and went into the prop, that would be catastrophically bad. The whole thing, you'd really shred your unit. So make sure all your Kevlar is tight. Bam. If you bend a cage piece, you know, you gotta make sure your Kevlar's tight and check things before you just go fly. So that's pretty important. Harness, no significant rips, tears, properly adjusted. There's another one. While you're flying here at super training, pay attention to where I'm adjusting your harness, your hook-in point, because when you get back home, you need to use the exact same one. So I'm doing it automatically, but it's your job to pay attention to what your specific hook-in point is. So if I put you in the second hole and your lumbar support's all the way forward, right here on these Velcros, and we say, yep, that's looking good, then when you get back home, that's where you want to be. Or maybe the lumbar supports are halfway back, maybe all the way back, or maybe first hole, or whatever that adjustment is. Make sure you think about that and lock that into memory, so when you get flying, you're automatically right and don't have to try and experiment. Leg straps, let's see, hang points, proper position for pilot, carabiners, hang straps, okay. Reserve, attached, secured properly, Velcro snug, pins, rubber banded. Throttle, works freely, goes to idle, make sure it idles. Stop, hose, okay. Secured, retention strap, okay. Make sure this is really easy to replace. So, if yours is like trash, just order a new one from us with the rivets. Yeah, this has been replaced and somebody drilled it out really funky, but at least it's got one. So you want to make sure everything's working properly, kill switch is working, pull starter clean, works properly, not worn. Make sure your pull starter's working okay. The bolts, glider secure tape on rope, we talked about that one. Prop tight, installed properly, no significant cracks, damage, we went over that. Pulleys eccentric, no cracks, significant pitting or damage. That's one other little thing, is to look at your pulley and make sure your actual pulley is not cracked. But we kind of tell when we wiggle this, if this pulley were cracked, you would feel creaking and wobbling, cracking, and vibration and stuff like that. You definitely don't want to be flying if your pulley is cracked. We really haven't had that issue, but way back when they very first came out, they had some weaker ones that started cracking and got a few cracks in them. And so you just pay attention and make sure you got no cracks in your pulley. That would be kind of ugly. Belt tension not worn out. Turn prop, inspect underside of belt. We did that. Airbox properly installed. Rubber boot glued, not cracked or damaged. We checked that. Engine mounts. Torque all bolts. We check the bolts by wiggling the prop. We check and make sure they're not broken. Spark plug, look. So we check our spark plug. That's right in there, part of that. Spark plug boot, make sure that's good. Make sure the little spring is on the inside properly. You look in there, you got that little spring there. And make sure this is cranked down so that's not loose and coming off. And bam, so all that's good. Look for cracks or damage. Muffler, silencer, smack it, wiggle it, check for cracks, damage. Fully seated. If we ship them, there's been a couple of times where the box gets smacked and it pops this off of that ball joint. So the spring comes down and it's like hanging off the ball joint, and that's kind of ugly. So you check and make sure it's seated. That's kind of your pre-flight. When you're smacking on it, you're gonna know. Not to mention if you try and fire it up, it's gonna sound like no muffler is attached.
For sure. So that spring's holding the muffler on.
Safety wire. Yeah, there's 4 springs, there's a safety wire. Some of the units come with heat shrink in them. Rubber mounts, motor and muffler. Those are our motor mounts again. Make sure those are all good, not cracked, not coming apart. Nice thing is there's 4 motor mounts, so even if you lost one at a time, it would still be just fine with 3. So you got redundancy. Gas tank, make sure your gas tank isn't leaking. Fuel mounts, make sure your one-way valve is secure and not falling out or out, gone. And make sure it's not clogged. If your gas tank ever looks like it's sucked in, that's a problem. That means your one-way valve is not letting the air into the tank. Attached securely, no leaks, fitting, fuel line tight.
Where's the one-way valve?
Engine operation use, that's that brass one-way valve. It lets air into the tank, but not out. So if you tip over, you don't dump gas all over yourself, which, if you fly any other paramotor, is exactly what happens. If you trip and fall down, you start dumping gas onto your body. They don't want you to get to the hospital. They just kind of torch you and that's it. Get it over quickly. Yeah, that was the old days. See, I went through all these things. You guys will never have to experience that because I've fixed so many little details that were just stupid stuff. I mean, literally, if you went to do your motor run up with most of the units, when you lean forward and do your full, you're dumping gas onto your body.
What the hell?
Yeah, exactly. It's the stupidest thing ever.
I can vouch for the fact that it's a nice sealed unit, because
Yeah.
I set mine down on here and there. It lays on its face and I slide it into my car.
Yeah.
I've never had an ounce of gas in the car.
That is also another secure position.
Yeah,
I mean, that's into the safety design. So when this falls forward, it's safe, see? So your face is not smashed into the ground. If you fall down on pretty much any other unit, it doesn't catch its own weight. It'll literally face plant you into the ground so hard. One guy snapped his neck and is now quadriplegic. Other people are dead. So that's why we call it face plant protection. Super strong comfort bar sticking out there to catch that weight.
Hang points, how do you know which one?
It's basically like a teeter-totter balance beam, and
just set it
so
and forget
depends
it
on your,
once
yeah.
you got it?
So I'm setting that for you guys automatically and fine-tuning it. So if I see you leaning too far forward or up or too far backwards, I'm adjusting it. So basically just pay attention to where I'm putting your hook in point. So when you get your flat tops, you'll know exactly where to put it. So you don't have to try and figure that one out.
They're usually already on when you
Yeah, I usually set them for you before we ship them.
harness everything.
But it depends. So always double check those. Prime engine, look for fuel leak, start engine, warm up, listen for handler. Okay, so now let's go through how to start the motor. Let's do it. First of all, point the motor downwind.
I can take this off.
Have you ever heard the term, don't piss into the wind?
Right.
Well, don't blow sand into the wind. It comes right back in your face. You want to move that glider over a little bit? Okie dokie, who's got their hands free? David. Hey, we got it right. There we go. Thank you, sir. That's it. Okay, so you come back here, bloop, round to the back, and you squeeze the primer bulb nice and hard. Look and try and fill this fuel filter as full as you can just by squeezing it. Fuel is not flowing because it doesn't until you press that button. So now you get it good and pressurized. Now you press the button and let about a 1/4 inch of this fuel into the fuel filter. Yep. So the button on the back of the carburetor, that one there. Now watch this fuel filter. Go for it.
More?
Yep, keep going top. There you go. So you want to do it just once. Do about 1/4 inch, about, yay much right there. And so you just let a little fuel in. Now you come around to the front side.
Sorry.
There you go. Right up front, your right foot goes up against the skid. There you go. Right, yep, hand goes there. Now, I usually put the throttle in the same hand. It's kind of funky, but you put the 3 fingers up and this finger down. So if it does push against you, you don't end up going with the throttle at the same time. Okay, now, but before you do that, you look at your throttle linkage and flick the throttle all the way and make sure it's not locked wide open. Now, grab your pull start handle. Just pull gently till it catches. No, just till it catches. So as soon as you, right there, now jerk it. Boom. There you go, pull till it catches. Now pull it. Yep, pull, bam.
Full throttle?
Yep, full throttle. Go for it. Pull till it catches, pull till it catches. Bingo, harder. There you go, keep going. Keep going. Nice job, keep going. Almost there. Almost there. Almost. Do it again. There you go. Ease off the throttle, let off. Okay, drop that, yep. Now I switch hands and I put the throttle in that hand. So just grab that, there you go. And then also kind of hold on to the comfort bar at the same time. There you go, just like that. There you go. Okay, now once it's started, you're looking at the fuel filter. If the fuel filter starts to go empty, you reach down and you squeeze the primer bulb to fill the fuel filter. Yep, squeeze the primer bulb. Don't stick your hand in the prop. Bingo, little throttle. When you do that, it's gonna run rich and you'll hear the RPMs drop. So little throttle, 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 throttle. There you go. So now you run it a bit more and you watch that fuel filter. If it starts going empty, prime it again. Starts going empty, prime it again. Until you can run it up to full throttle for 15, 20 seconds till it runs good. We've been running them, so it's pretty much good to go. And you don't really want to run them full throttle sitting on the sand because you're sandblasting your prop.
Going down now.
So yeah, you got to be careful. Yep, do it again. Little throttle, there you go. There you go. Now hold it and just rev it up a couple of times. A little more. There you go. So after you get it a little warmed up, you want to get some RPMs going because it'll purge the fuel system faster when you get the RPMs up. Okay, go ahead and shut it off. Okay, so he's ready to go.
So that was just to keep the pressure in the tank now? Do you have a positive pressure?
It's to kind of get the fuel flow flowing and get the air purged out of the system. You're never going to get all the air, but you just want to make sure that it's flowing consistently, and then it'll run real nice. Then you immediately go fly. If you left it and were setting up for an hour, you'd have to come back and get your motor warmed up again. Okay. The little car racks we sell are kind of cool because you could leave it sit in the car rack. You can also drop it to its comfort bars in that nice stable position and let it run there. Okay. So it's warming up while you're setting up your wing. Because we need to try and make it come up the other way because it really wants to shoot left because of the weight shift. So, okay, here we go. Let's give her a shot. Give her a lift. Yep, and lift left only, basically. Left side. There you go. Little left. There you go. Little left brake, left brake, left brake. There you go. Turn in, get her stable. If you got it, if you can, then you can do your trims. If you want, just nice and smooth. Yep, then give it a yank. There you go. One at a time, generally. There you go. Then give me a hand. There we go, and here we go. You ready? Left brake. Super Mo, nice job, sir.